Episode 350. Swordpoint was pinned to the ground by that spear thrust. The 4 resident mobs seized the chance to swarm him, showing no mercy and no regard for proper combat form. They piled onto the prone Swordpoint, one grabbing his head. In system terms, this is called a sweeping attack. Like a starving wolf pouncing on its prey, the 4 creatures instantly surrounded Swordpoint. Only half his head was visible above the swarm, looking utterly helpless. Swordpoint struggled, swinging his blade to cleave through one of the minions. He rolled to his feet, but in that brief moment, the 4 creatures had already mauled half his health away. But before he could even catch his breath, Soft Mist's spear was already thrusting toward his face. This time, however, Swordpoint was ready. He managed to leap aside, but Tangru wasn't about to let up. Her attacks came in a relentless, tightening rhythm. In her eyes, those 4 resident mobs were now the picture of harmony, all working together to help her take this guy down. His health bar was being whittled away with every strike. He couldn't fight back, and there was nowhere to run. He frantically swung his camera view left and right, desperately hoping for a miracle to save him. And then from above there really was a thunderous boom. Swordpoint looked up and saw someone on the opposite rooftop. It wasn't his brother, but the enemy team's Windward Rain. His grenadier brother had been blasted back into the street twice, but he was relentless, using his aerial fire again and again to leap back up. This time was even worse than the last 2. The moment he landed and turned around, he found himself staring straight down the barrel of a gun. A shell blasted him point blank, the force of the explosion sending him flying before he could even steady his footing. Down he went again. This time, Su Mucheng didn't have to worry about anything else. She could focus entirely on raining down fire from the rooftop, bombarding this guy relentlessly. 1-on-1, a player versus a pro. The outcome was a foregone conclusion. On Yishu's side, Lord Grimm stepped forward and proactively knocked down the players who had come to support the contact. These players were all top-tier experts from Dynasty. They knew Lord Grimm was formidable, but it never crossed their minds that Lord Grimm was Ye Chu. Had they known Lord Grimm was a top-tier player of this caliber, they would never have come here to throw their lives away. Just how vast is the gap between a pro player and an ordinary gamer? It's hard to give a precise answer, as it really depends on the individual's skill level. But during promotional events for the various clubs and teams, it's not uncommon to see pro players put on a show. They'll invite regular players for a few rounds, and taking on several opponents at once is all in a day's work for them. Only 5 Dynasty players were charging in, while on the other side stood a top-tier pro, a true legend of the game. The outcome of this fight was never in doubt. But these 5 players had no idea. They only knew Lord Grimm was formidable, so they were being extra cautious even with their numbers advantage. But they had no idea the gap in their strength was so vast that no amount of caution on their part could bridge it. In the mid-lane clash, Ye Shu faced 5 alone, yet he was the one who seized the initiative and attacked. Lord Grimm charged forward. The ranged attackers opened fire, but Ye Shu effortlessly deflected every shot. The speed of that first slash caught all 5 of them off guard. The melee fighters scrambled to react, but Lord Grimm had already unleashed a wave wheel slash. The sword energy swept out. To dodge it by jumping like Ye Shu did required lightning-fast hands and pinpoint accuracy, something not just anyone could pull off. In fact, for the average player, jumping isn't even considered a way to dodge a draw sword slash. Their most common method is to retreat. While a backstep is technically a jump, it's really just used as a form of retreat. They tried to use that very method to dodge the slash. Their reaction was quick enough, but their calculations weren't as precise as Ye Shu's. Ye Shu had already calculated that their reaction would be to jump back, so the range of this slash was perfectly measured. Using a back jump would leave them just a hair's breadth short, a subtle gap most players wouldn't even notice. They were all convinced they'd dodged it, yet every single one of them got hit. The sword energy caught them mid-backflip, sending them flying even farther than they'd intended. Only the strong could survive on this battlefield. The players were sent flying, but each executed a flawless quick recover. They rolled upon landing, and sprang back to their feet, only to be engulfed in a sudden brilliant blue light. The next instant, the radiant column erupted skyward, lifting their bodies with it into the air. It was a rising heaven formation. They realized it instantly. The Lord Grimm in their line of sight hadn't moved a muscle, clearly just a shadow clone. But where was Lord Grimm's real body? The real body was, of course, right beneath them. He raised his weapon 2 shots, and one rising opponent was blasted away. With a flick, the weapon transformed into a battle spear. He thrust it forward, sending another flying. A spin, a sweeping palm strike, a deafening roar sent a third one reeling. Another pivot, and the spear came whipping down. The weapon shifted back to its gun form. 3 deafening booms, a single anti-tank cannon skill, sent another opponent flying with 3 consecutive shells. In the brief window of the Skyward Array's launch, Yexu executed 4 separate attacks, striking all 4 targets from the moment they rose until they fell. The brothers who had been standing together were suddenly scattered, flung to the 4 winds. The only one who landed safely was the City of Sin resident. He was the one Lord Grimm was currently pummeling with his weapon. As for the other 4 who landed, they found themselves reliving the same fate that had just befallen Swordpoint. Surrounded by residents of Sin City, they were instantly targeted by mobs, each gaining a personal follower. The dilemma was immediate: deal with their own pursuers, rush to rescue the nearly beaten to death Yuan Cheng, or save the already dying Jianfeng Zisuo. A choice, a truly difficult choice. But they didn't have to agonize for long, because Tang Ru was the first to present them with an option. As for Swordpoint, honestly, in a true one-on-one, with his experience and more polished skills, he might not have necessarily lost to Tang Ru, who was merely fast on the controls. It's a pity he was too cunning, always trying to pull those underhanded tricks. Now, he was being... Yeshu had paid him back in kind, leaving him tangled up with the mobs. While Tang Ru had been forced to use up one of the stolen gifts he'd forced on her, Soft Mist now possessed the Battle Mage's fighting spirit. Her attacks were swift and ruthless. Even in a one-on-one duel, Swordpoint would no longer be able to handle her, let alone now that he's going for it. Jianfeng Suoji thought to himself. He'd made this same desperate resolve before, only to have it aimed at the wrong target. Now, making that vow again, his fighting spirit had already withered. Because he'd gone all out all right, and just as expected, he'd fought himself straight to death. With Jianfeng Suoji's fall, the entire purpose of those 5 reinforcements arriving was... Their purpose was gone. They scrambled to rescue their comrade being tortured by Lord Grimm and make a run for it. But getting here was easy. Leaving now was 1,000 times harder. Tang Ru had already finished off Swordpoint. Su Mucheng, holding the high ground, blasted the demolition expert to pieces.